Hey guys, I want to talk to you today about something that has kind of come up. A couple things really. First thing we're going to talk about is the situation with the Utah nurse that ends up getting arrested for not taking blood from an unconscious patient. And basically, I'm sure you guys have probably seen the video. If not, you can pretty much just Google it or do a search on YouTube for Utah police officer or Utah nurse arrested or whatever. But the point being is that in this particular case, this nurse was arrested for not taking blood from an unconscious patient, and the hospital had already pre-arranged certain policies and had already verified them with local law enforcement that these were their policies and that these were things that they were going to stand by. The nurse was on the phone with either administrators or legal counsel at the time and was simply relaying information that her bosses and or legal counsel were telling them or were telling her. She was relaying that information back to the officer, and the officer basically just gets fed up and arrests her and goes about putting his hands on her and so on and so forth. So this raises the issue of the paradigm that's been proposed before by a lieutenant colonel in the Army. I think it was Grossman was his name. And basically this guy is an Army psychologist, and one of the things that he had proposed was this sheepdog wolf kind of paradigm. And basically what he does is he tries to classify or subcategorize people into one of three different categories. Either you're a sheep, or you're a sheepdog, meaning you kind of got that protector role, or you're a wolf. And in going through some of his analysis and how his analysis has been used, one of the things that's kind of been touted in the past is that the reason for the social disconnect between civilians and law enforcement is because essentially law enforcement is the sheepdogs and the civilian populace are the sheep. And because the sheepdog looks so much like the wolf, the people fear them. And this is utter and complete BS. I've got stronger words for it, but I'm actually trying to make an effort to control that. But it's complete crap. The fact of the matter is, the reason why the populace fears the police is because exactly what this officer did. Because of just an utter violation of rights, him overstepping his bound, him usurping this woman's rights, and basically he throws a temper tantrum and then uses his power and his authority in the process of that tantrum. Now, it has since come to light that he was suspended for his actions and that there are possible criminal charges pending, to which I would have to wholeheartedly support his department for actually taking this matter serious enough to look at potential charges. I think he should be criminally charged for his actions. Now, that being said, this raises somewhat of an issue because a lot of people are going to sit there and say, oh, well, you're anti-law enforcement, this and that, which, again, that's complete crap as well. The fact of the matter is that I train and teach many law enforcement people where, in cases where I would flat out refuse to teach, let's say, a group of Muslims. It's not that I have a problem with law enforcement officers. What I have a problem with is people who use their position in a manner that really exemplifies themselves as wolves and not sheepdogs. And the problem is not that the sheepdog looks so much like the wolf. the problem is that people want to sit there and categorize or paint with a broad brush and say all law enforcement is sheepdogs, or even all military, for instance, or all contractors are sheepdogs. And that's just simply not the case. This goes right back to the issue that we've talked about in the past regarding mice, money, ideology, coercion, ego, and looking at those underlying motivations that lie within individuals. And the same thing goes within this sheepdog, wolf, analogy. The fact of the matter is regardless of your occupation, your inner motivations is what defines you as a sheepdog, a sheep, or a wolf. Law enforcement provides opportunities for those who have those innate motivations to be able to exercise those motivations in a positive manner, those protector type motivations. However, it also provides an environment for wolves to breed as well. And that's simply because of the fact that, unfortunately, because of the nature of the work, the danger that's inherently involved in it, many officers don't feel free to police their own, so to speak. And because of that, because of the lack of policing of their own, what it does is it creates an environment where wolves can breed also. And there's numerous cases that you can look at. One in particular that comes to mind is that Christopher Dorner case. And regardless of this individual's politics, I don't necessarily agree with him. But the fact of the matter is both the suspect's father, and Christopher Dorner had basically presented to the LAPD that another officer had kicked a mentally ill patient. I think it was while he was in handcuffs. And despite those three people's testimony, he tried to address it and police his own. Two other officers basically went on record and said, no, he was lying. So they fired Dorner for it. And then basically in his mental collapse as a result of being fired and as a result of his frustration, he goes on a shooting spree and just starts shooting up cops. I'm not supporting what he did, but what I'm saying is that there's cases where guys actually stand on their own moral grounds and say, no, I'm going to do the right thing, and they're summarily disciplined for it. And that stands as a reminder to future officers who try to do the same type of thing as to how things are going to be dealt with them. So I do think that we have a systemic problem, and it's not something that is located just within law enforcement. It's located even within the military and even within contractors as well. It's located anywhere in any environment where sheepdogs feel that innate need to be able to exercise their right, but it's also, without the proper policing of these issues, it also creates an environment for wolves to breed as well. And the end result is that the people that they're supposed to be policing and protecting end up becoming the victims, and that's what creates the divide. Because they're all wearing the same uniform, somebody has a bad experience with a law enforcement officer who oversteps his bounds, violates their constitutional rights, basically exemplifies himself as a wolf. The problem is now that individual is going to paint all law enforcement with that brand, or with that same brush, and that's unfair, but it's also the nature of the beast. The fact of the matter is people exemplify themselves as either sheep, sheepdog, or wolves, not based on what they do for a living, not based on their occupation, but based on who they are as individuals. I think it was Martin Luther King had said that that we're to judge a man not on the color of his skin, but on the content of his character. And by the same token, I would probably expand that a little further and say that we're to judge a man not on the color of his uniform or whether he has one, but on the content of his character. The fact of the matter is that people are people. And this is a biblical concept as well. Even Jesus, when addressing the disciples in future times, he said, there's going to be this falling away, and there'll be heresy, there'll be all these things. And the disciples are like, well, how are we to know? And Jesus said, you'll know them by their fruits. Not based on whether or not they're wearing priestly robes, not based on whether or not they have the pastor before their name, or the reverend, or some MDiv credential, behind their name. It's not based on that. You'll know them by their fruits. You'll know them by the content of their character, how they exemplify themselves, how they carry themselves, how they live out their life. Do they truly believe what it is that they purport, or is this really just an environment where they are seeking to exercise their predatory nature? So something I wanted to point out there. Wanted to get some other things, but the video's kind of running long, so I'll cut it there, and we'll do another video covering some other stuff. All right, you guys train hard.